Hi everybody, today we're going to test some decks and this being the first time that I actually do this, I'll start out with a deck I named the Mage deck, which is very suggestively named Heavy Mage. The reason for this name is the card that it is made of, and you can see it's actually a pretty much every legendary dragon mage deck. The mana curve, as you can see here, it's kind of fair. We have a couple of drops for the first 4 turns. We also have some drops for the 5 and 6 turn, and a lot more drops for the late game. Now the stuff that I added, we have 2 arcane missiles, which this card is actually really good against most of the aggro decks, the rush decks, because they tend to play a lot of 1 health minions. Even the Murloc decks have a lot of 1 health minion, and if you can get this spell into your hand on turn 1 or turn 2, let's say, this is a good counter. Although for me it doesn't work that well, because most of the time the RNG fails me and I hit mostly the opponent's face instead of the minions, but who knows, it might work for somebody else. We also have 2 mirror images. This card actually is more of it's considered, along with the arcane missiles and all the 1 mana or 2 mana spells, all are considered triggers for the mana worm. The mirror image is also good against both rush decks or control decks, because you can either use it at the start of the game when you're facing, the rush decks, and the images themselves aren't that good. I mean, there are 2/0/2 minions, but they actually stop 2 direct attacks to your minions or to your face, and that really makes a difference. And also you can use it in late game when playing control, or mid game, depends on the case, and you can actually stop a lot of I don't know, let's say there are a lot of cases where you actually reach a point when you need 1 more mana to drop a good minion, and you don't have it that turn, and you don't want to let the opponent hit you or destroy your minions. So this is a good play right at that moment. This is a good play because it actually forces the opponent to take to at least make an extra lose at least one attack with 1 of his minions, or if he has a weapon, lose a charge from the weapon. Anyways, you can't really rely on it for protection or consecration. Any board removal deals with it really quick, and not dealing any damage to the opponent's minions, or the opponent for that matter, it's kind of a drawback. But all in all, you might find yourself in some spots where you need a little extra protection. Consider it a shaman's shield totem, but you get at half the cost, you get 2 of those totems for yourself. The 3rd spot in this deck, it's occupied by maybe the, let's say, worst fear for any other deck if you can put this card on turn 1, and if it can survive till, let's say, turn 3, if it goes beyond turn 3 it's even better, but if you can put it down on turn 1 and even turn 2 for that matter, if you have a coin it's more the better. And if you have a coin you can actually and be really lucky. I actually made a druid concede because I had 2 mana worms on turn 1 and a coin and a mirror image, so I dropped and 2 mirror images, sorry. So I coined out on turn 1 the 2 mana worms, followed, actually I coined 1, I placed 1 on turn 1, and then on turn 2 I coined out the other one, I placed the other one and coined out a mirror image. So you can guess that by the time we reached 5 mana he was down to, if I remember correctly, 16 health. So without using any spells from my part, just the mana worm, because by the time he dealt with the 4 taunts, the 4 mirror images, it was already too late. I mean, he was down so low on health that, so this is actually a good play against the rush decks, because you can drop for 1 mana a 1/3 attack minion that actually gets buffed on each turn, and you can back it up again using the firebolt, the hero ability of the mage. So you basically, right here you have a good rush stopper, but the downside to the mana worm is that it has only 3 life, and that can be really easy taken care of. I mean, a rat would kill it, a fiery war axe, anything, wolf rider, anything that has 3 attack can kill it right away, or any spell that deals 3 damage, or a frostbolt for that matter if you're playing against another mage, Shadow Word Death, and so on. Speaking of Shadow Word Death, you can actually play the mana worm against the priest, and if you can have a lot of cheap spells in your deck, I mean, if you have another deck, because as you can see from my deck, there won't be enough cheap spells to actually really buff up the mana worm, but the cheap spells are there for another reason, and I'll explain it later. Actually, if you can buff it up to 4, you'll have a good card to play against the priest. So the mana worm, and I mean, what can you actually place instead of the mana worm? As you can look at the mage cards, not much to choose from. The Sorcerer's Apprentice, yeah, I know it's a so-so card. Actually, this is more like a summoning portal, like the Warlock summoning portal, except it only loses you 1 mana cost, and it only applies to spells. So let's say you can cast, you have I don't know, 8 mana, right? You have 8 mana and you have a flame strike in your hand, and you want to play the flame strike, but after that you won't be able to place any minions on the board. So you actually can play the Sorcerer's Apprentice first, and then play the flame strike for 6 mana. Right, sorry for that, had a little lag there. So you can actually play the flame strike for 6 mana, the Sorcerer's Apprentice for 2 mana, and then playing the flame strike for 6 mana, and you'll have a minion left on the board afterwards. Right, so pretty much for 1 mana cost, the mana worm is the best option here. And since I'm not running a spell focused deck, I actually need a mana worm just to get that little threat out there if I'm running against, I don't know, hunter or warlock. The fourth card is the Arcane Explosion. This card is actually, I haven't seen it in a lot of decks, in a lot of mage decks lately, and that is because for a 2-cost mana card dealing 1 damage to enemy minions, it's not that good. This is actually a good card against a lot of the aggro decks, and it's actually really good if you can back it up with a cobbled geomancer, because you actually can deal with pretty much, let's say, a warlock zoo. If he floods the board with a lot of minions, they won't have more than 2 health. As you can see, the Knife Juggler is 2 health, the Flame Imp is 2 health, so you can actually push 2 damage in one wave against the Zulak and kill, let's say, a fair amount of minions. And the reason I'm playing this card is both because having sometimes the arcane missiles tends to miss. I mean, there are cases when you will have 2 1-health minions on the board and the arcane missiles miss them both completely or hit only one of them. So playing the Arcane Explosion it's a better deal. So that's why I'm keeping it here, and the other reason I'm keeping it here is because I need it again in combination with some of the other cards that I have in this deck. Right, a Frost Nova. As you can see, the Frost Nova is actually a control deck oriented card, and this works really well if you can play it after your opponent flooded the board. You can actually play it and then place a Doomsayer, and that means if he can handle the Doomsayer the next turn, all the board will be cleaned, including yours. But hey, if your opponent has, let's say, 6 minions and you only have 2, then this is actually the Mage's best AoE combo in the game, in my opinion, because he can kill every minion, regardless if they have Divine Shield or, I don't know, 8 health or something like that. And that's pretty good. But I'm not running the Doomsayer in this deck because the Doomsayer is actually, like I said, it's more oriented in heavy control decks like the Frozen Giants Mage deck, when you can you need to stall the game most of the time just to get enough cards in your hand to place the giants. And in my opinion, Doomsayer, actually think about the following scenario. Let's say you play against a priest, you Frost Nova this turn. Right, priest isn't the most aggro oriented class in the game, but I actually run into a couple of priests that played a lot of minions and he has a Shadow Word Death in his hand, which he casts on the Doomsayer, and that will leave you, let's say, stuck. So Doomsayer actually in this deck made room for other minions. And if I'm honest, I don't have the Doomsayer card, but I had it, I don't know, I had it 4 times until now, but I disenchanted all 4 of them because, well, to me it isn't that I don't like to play a mage that actually depends on, let's say, one good combo to remove a board, and that combo requires a creature which it's actually different from the paladin's wild equality wild pyromancer equality combo. Okay, that's a good combo, but this one, I don't know, you have to wait. I mean, it's a combo that only works after your opponent's turn, so doesn't work that well for me. I don't really like the effects of, I don't know, spells or any other stuff that triggers after your opponent's turn, like what they did to Nat Pagal right now. It's better to have an effect when you actually play your turn. So this is the reason I don't run the Doomsayer. Right, for the next card I went for the Big Game Hunter, which right now with everybody running, almost everybody running Rag, it's a must-have, and you can actually use it. I don't know, let's say you play Ragnaros or Alexstrasza or Onyxia or any other big minion with more than 7 attack, and you actually decide to, I don't know, copy it or something like that, or you play Rag, like what happened to me one time against a druid. I played my Rag, he killed it using Naturalize, and then played his own Rag. So the next turn I actually killed it with the Big Game Hunter, so it can actually get you out from a lot of messes, or if you're going against a Warlock Giant's Lock and your opponent plays a turn 4 Mountain Giant, let's say, you can actually get rid of it with the Big Game Hunter. This doesn't guarantees that you can actually deal with every big minions your opponent plays, because you can get it in your hand, I don't know, by turn 15, let's say, and by then it's useless. But it's good to have it in your deck, at least one of them, and that's why I included one in this deck. The fireballs are actually, let's say, a Mage's trademark. I mean, if you ever make a Mage deck, you can't have one without the fireball, because the fireball, and right now some people use it wrong. The fireball, it's actually used at the moment more as a minion control spell rather than dealing damage to your opponent. Because let's say you have a mana worm on the board, turn 3, turn 4, okay, and your opponent the next turn he plays a Senjin Shieldmaster, which, as you know, has 3 attack, 5 health, so that card can deal with that minion can deal with your mana worm the next turn and remain on the board. So actually, if you have a fireball in your hand, it's best to use it on the Senjin Shieldmaster rather than keep hold of it and, I don't know, trying to deal damage to your opponent, because 6 damage is not that much if you consider the Earthen Ring Farseers, all the healing spells that most of the classes have, or even this spell can take out even a Druid of the Claw, which has 4/6, so it's really a good remover, or a Yeti for that matter. So it's best to use them as a minion removal rather than to blow your opponent's face with them, because that way you'll get dealing with the minions with a fireball, you'll get a much higher value from them. The other card that in my opinion must be in every mage's deck is the polymorph, and at the moment I've seen in a lot of competitions and in some decks that I've played against, they don't actually run polymorph, which in my opinion it's a big mistake. I mean, yeah, you can make room for, let's say, a Sylvana, but having a mage without a polymorph is like having a shaman without his hexes. The polymorph main uses are heavy removal, and you know, by after turn 4 you can actually deal with any minion your opponent plays. Think of it as a Tingmaster Overspark that always gets the square when you play it. And you'll see what I mean. And if you actually play it after turn 4, let's say turn 5, 6, you can actually remove the minion completely. Let's say if you don't have anything on the board and your opponent plays a Boulder Fist Ogre on turn 6, so when you're going to turn 6 or 7, you can polymorph it and firebolt it for 1 damage. So in my opinion this is a card that and is the best removal against some heavy threats like Tyrion, Fordring, Alakir, Giants, anything you name it, Ragnaros, because this also negates, sorry for the ambulance sound, because this also negates all the writing on the card. I mean, it negates, in the case of Tyrion, it negates his Divine Shield, it negates his Taunt, it negates his 5/3 Ashbringer Death Rattle. And in my opinion this is a must-have card in every mage's deck. The next card is the Azure Drake. The Azure, it's actually played in a lot of decks. I've seen it in Priest decks, Druid decks, Mage's decks, Shaman decks. I mean, and the reason for that is because it's a 5 mana cost 4/4 creature that gives you +1 to spell damage, and as a mage you'll be looking for that spell damage. I mean, let's say turn 9 comes up and your opponent has the same Boulder Fist Ogre on the board. You have an empty board and you have a fireball in your hand, but there's a problem. You can actually deal with the Boulder Fist, let's say, and using the fireball and the fire blast from the hero power, hero ability, but you can actually play the Azure, have a minion on the board and deal 7 damage with the fireball, or maybe you have your opponent to 7 health and you need that little extra, or anyways, this is a good card. And maybe with fireball it doesn't matter that much, because 1 damage you can always deal the damage and ping your opponent, but like I said, it adds another minion on your board, so it's a better value to drop the Azure and then hit the fireball than to fireball and then ping. That is if you have the mana for it, because this is a combination that works only at 9 mana plus. So, but but this also adds well with your other spells, because you can actually get on turn 6, you can play the Azure and then hit and then launch 4 arcane missiles. You can deal 4 damage with the arcane with the frostbolt. You can deal 2 damage with the arcane explosion. You can deal 3 damage AoE with the blizzard. You can deal 5 damage with the flame strike. So it's actually really good, and it also allows you to cycle to your deck by drawing your card. And like I said, this effect triggers immediately, and that for me it's a good value, because you don't have to, let's say, like in the case of the Acolyte of Pain, or where you have to wait for your opponent to attack into it, or you have to ping it yourself if you can, or deal damage yourself to the Acolyte to draw a card. Even the Loot Hoarder, for that matter, even the Blood Mage Talons. And right now, you see, when Nat Pagal was okay before the nerf, that was the ultimate drawing machine, and I'm guessing it still is right now if you can't deal with it. But if you don't have Nat Pagal, okay, I admit this card costs 5 mana, the Loot Hoarder costs only 2 mana, the Acolyte costs only 3 mana. But let's say you play an Acolyte and you're going against a Hunter, and the Hunter drops a Stampeding Kodo, and that Stampeding Kodo will actually destroy your Acolyte without triggering his Death Rattle, which is his effect, which is to draw a card. Or you're playing against a Priest and he has Shadow Word Death in his hand, and again you won't draw anything. Or you can get Shadow Madness. Your opponent can Shadow Madness your Acolyte and attack with it, and he'll draw the card instead of you. So anyways, the Azure is actually not a very good card, but not a bad one. I'd say it's about an average card, but a little higher than the average. So it fits really well in this deck. The next card is the Faceless Manipulator, which in my opinion is one of the best cards in the game at the moment, because you can always use it. I don't know, let's say you drop a Tyrion, and you can, if you're able to keep him on the board for the next turn, you can Faceless it. So it adds, whenever you're playing a big threat, you can actually double that threat the next turn if it survives using a Faceless. And it's good because it works both ways. I mean, if you're playing, like let's say a Mage, and your opponent is a Paladin, and he drops Tyrion, you can Faceless it, and then you'll have a Tyrion, and so on. And it's a really fun card because it leads to a lot of fun plays where you'll have, let's say, 4 Viseras on the board, or 4 Ragnaros, or any other combination. And actually the best combo for this card, in my opinion, is what I call Rack, Copy and Destroy, or Copy and Delete. You can actually, if you have the Faceless and the Big Game Hunter in your hand, and your opponent plays Ragnaros, you can copy it the next turn with the Faceless, and then use the Big Game Hunter on your opponent's Ragnaros to get rid of it, and you get the idea. I'm not running 2 of those cards because when you're playing a heavy control deck, or a deck that's focused mainly on big minions and all that, having 2 Faceless might be a problem, because you can actually get them both into your hand at some point. Maybe not in your first game, or the second one, or the third one, but at some point you can end up with both in your hand, and they'll be completely useless if you don't have anything worthwhile copying on the board. I mean, having 2 Facelesses on Faceless Manipulators in your hand, and let's say on the board you have a Loot Hoarder, a Mad Bomber, and knife juggler, let's say. So that would be a pretty shitty scenario, and you won't be able to do anything that turn because there's no reason for you to copy those minions, and that can delay your play. It's actually good if you're playing more of a, let's say, a rush oriented deck, because for instance, if you place a Doom Guard and the next turn you draw into a Faithless, you draw your card and you life type into a Faceless, so then that's when you can actually add value to the Faceless, because you can place a copy of your Doom Guard, which will also have charge, and you get the idea. Or you can Faceless, in some decks you can actually play it on Leroy Jenkins. When you are at 9 mana, play Leroy, Faceless him, and then deal 12 damage. And that's when you actually need 2 Facelesses, so you'll be more certain that you'll have the combo in your hand at some point. But in a deck like this one, I only need one Faceless to actually do something. The next card, it's again another, in my opinion, another above the average card, maybe even entering the better cards in the game. The Blizzard, which is the Mage's AoE, and the best one of the Mage's AoEs. But unlike Flame Strike, which Flame Strike deals considerable more amount of damage. I mean, it deals double damage to all the minions. But this card's most beneficial effect for you, in my opinion, is that it freezes your opponent's minions. And if you have a spell power card on the board, like I told you, the Kobo Geomancer, the Azure Drake, or if you're playing, I don't know, anything else that gives you spell power, this card has really big value. And when you're playing against rush decks or aggro decks, it's actually a good it's good to as a crowd control. When your opponent floods the board mostly with 1 health or 2 health minions, this card will actually do really good, and also holding back all the other minions which survive it. So again, a must-have card, and that's why it's included in this deck. The next card, it's maybe again one of the most played cards right now. It's Cairn Bloodhoof, and the reason for it is that it has one of the best values in the game. I mean, it's basically a you basically get 2 Yetis for 6 mana, and having a Death Rattle, it's actually a card that sticks around, and your opponent, this is the kind of card that will most likely be the best target for silences and removals. And that's why this card is, I don't intend to do much, I don't know, it's not here to actually do that much of a damage to my opponent. It's here because and apart from being a good bait for removals and silences, it also acts as a good control card, because board control card, because of his Death Rattle effect. So you can actually afford to lose one of the Cairn Bloodhoof, because after that you'll get Bane Bloodhoof, which again it's a 4/5. So you get the idea. This is another really good card for any control decks. So we got to the Flame Strike, another of the Mage's AoEs, and this one, it's kind of, I don't know, for 4 damage to all enemy minions. It's kind of a double consecration that doesn't affect the enemy hero, but it's almost twice as expensive as the normal consecration. And I'm not really fond of this card. I mean, yeah, it deals 4 damage to anything on the board, but when you get to 7 mana, I mean, if you're running against, let's say, a rush deck, if you get to 7 mana and you're forced to play the Flame Strike and you don't have anything on the board, then it's actually kind of wasteful, and it won't give you that much of a help, because as you know, this card is better to have it played when you have minions yourself on the board. So this won't be the, I don't know, let's say the last card you play that turn, or or even take your whole turn if you're at 7 mana, and then you'll be left with an empty board because your opponent can get the advantage again. But 4 damage is 4 damage, and of course by the time you get to, again, if you're playing against control decks, by the time you get to 7 mana, all the creatures have more than 4 life, and this card, again, it's better if you can use it with a spell power minion, anything that gives spell power, and if you can buff it up to, let's say, 5, 6, 7 damage, depending on how many spell powers you have on the board, and then it has a lot of value. But at the moment, to me, it seems more of like a, unlike the Blizzard, which and you can actually see the difference. For one mana, you can deal 4 damage to all enemy minions, but that's all you can do. Unlike the Flame Strike, the Blizzard also freezes your opponent's minions, so that's what I was talking about. I mean, even if you have an empty board, you can actually at least consider that you won't get killed by the remaining minions the next turn. So anyways, it is a very good card, but it's more of a desperate call for, I don't know, more of a call for desperation when you play it. And if you get to play the Flame Strike, I mean, I won't play it even if I'm at 8 mana if my opponent has only 2 minions. So Flame Strike is actually a last resort spell, and it's oriented, I don't know, when you have more than 10, 11 turns between you and your opponent, and you know, when you're actually getting to the end of your deck, you'll get a lot of mixed up creatures, and okay, you can take care of some of them with the Flame Strike, then you can actually play it really well. But I guess against most of the aggro decks, this is a very powerful card. So now we're getting to the legendaries, the big legendaries. Archmage Antonidas. You have, in my opinion, if you're planning to run a heavy mage deck, you have to include this card in it. Haven't seen it a lot in constructed. I mean, the fact that it gives you a fireball every time you play a spell makes it, again, like Cairn, makes this card the perfect bait for removals or minion attacks, or you name it, hexes and so on. But there's a downside. you actually if you play your Archmage and you don't have any spells to follow it, I mean, if you play him this turn and the other turn and you don't play any spells and the other turn it gets killed, then that's a whole turn wasted for nothing. So it's better to hang on to the Archmage, and that's why I've included the 1 mana cost spells and 2 mana cost spells, because I need to back up the Archmage. When I play him, if I have an Arcane Missiles or even Arcane Explosion or Frostbolt or anything like that, I can... Of course you won't have this scenario all the time, but in my opinion it's good to have the Archmage in your deck if you're playing control, even if it doesn't do you any well. And unlike the Cairn, if you're playing against a priest, Cairn doesn't die to Shadow Word death. So next card is Ragnaros. I know some people don't play him at the moment, or because it's randomness. I mean, yeah, you can play him on the board. If he gets silenced, you'll have an 8/8 creature the next turn. If he doesn't get silenced, he'll hit a fireball wherever he chooses, and sometimes you get the lucky coin flip, sometimes you don't. Like, there are cases when I played Ragnaros and I needed him to hit my opponent's face that turn, and my opponent had 4 or 5 minions, and he did just that and won me the game. And there were cases when my opponent had the giant and 1/1, and I wanted him to hit the giant, and he did just that. But there are also cases when he'll hit that 1/1 instead of the giant, or instead of hitting your opponent's face, he hits I don't know, 2/1 or anything. But it's a really good card, and the problem with Ragnaros, it dies to Big Game Hunter. If he gets faceless and his Ragnaros hits your Ragnaros, then it's a disaster. It can also get if your opponent has Sylvanas and your Rag hits his Sylvanas again, but I don't know, in some cases Rag can pull you out of some deep shit, and in my opinion it's a really good card. Another card that you won't see in a lot of Mage decks, I'm guessing even at all in the Mage deck, it's Alexstrasza. The reason I included him here is because, as you can see, I have two Pyroblasts, and when you're playing against a control warrior, let's say, or I don't know, but I'll stick to the control warrior, and that warrior can get to a really high amount of armor, let's say, or you're playing against a, I don't know, a control player that always deals with your board and in the process dealing damage to your face, so you kind of you have to do something to lower his health so that you can actually play Rag or Pyroblast him or something like that. So then you can play Alexstrasza, and you can drop him from 30, 28, 20, I don't know, to 15 health, and that's a big problem for your opponent, because the next turn he'll have to figure out ways to either heal himself up to recover that massive loss, or deal with Alexstrasza, because he is an 8/8 and a big threat. Or if you get destroyed, you can play Alexstrasza and heal yourself up to 15. Of course, not that much of a deal. If you're left with two health, you're probably dead anyways. But I don't know, if I've already included more dragons in this deck, so having Alstrata here seems like the a good thing. Another dragon that's actually really hard to play, it's Maligos. It has +5 spell damage, and that is a lot. I mean, if you can get this guy on the board, and if he survives for at least one turn, it can actually destroy and turn the entire game around, even if you are left behind, or you can actually destroy your opponent in the next turn or even the turn after that. And the problem with this guy is that it costs 9 mana, so right here this is actually a very good combo if you can get it in your hand. That is, it's play Maligos and then play Arcane Missiles, so you'll have 8 missiles or 8 damage randomly. You'll have basically an Avenging Rat going against to your opponent. Those arcane don't hit as well as the Avenging Rat from the Paladin deck, but it can make a difference. And if you can even play Maligos, and on the other turn you can play Blizzard or Flame Strike, you know, the Flame Strike with little 9 damage to everything on the board. The Blizzard will deal 7 damage, Pyroblast would deal 15 damage, Fireball 11, and so on and so on. So yeah, it's not a good play most of the time because it can get silenced, and then it's basically an Ysera. But unlike Ysera, this guy doesn't have an effect. Again, doesn't have an effect at the end of your turn. You need to allow your opponent to play his turn, and then you can benefit from his ability. But anyways, it's here more as a, I don't know, it's more of a cherry on top of the cake here in this deck. So if you can be the lucky one that has the cherry, that's fine. If not, well, that's it. It's a vanilla card. So the next dragon in this deck is Onyxia. Onyxia, it's, I don't know, it's again an 8/8 with a good battle cry. It will summon 1/1 whelps until your side of the board is full, and you'll get, along with those whelps, you'll get an 8/8 body on the board. So this is actually a good card again against some aggro decks. If you can drop it, you can actually clear the board a little, or you can drop it if you have a Knife Juggler. You play the Knife Juggler the turn before and it survives, and you can play Onyxia. Then again, you'll have 6 knives that flies at your opponent. You don't want to play this card if you're going against a Hunter and even a Paladin, anything that runs Wild Pyro. So it's kind of a, I don't know, I placed it here because having another dragon seems fine, and it actually, I don't know, it's another card that it's an 8/8 body, so, and it does something while you play it. I mean, it summons the whelps when you actually play it. And for me, the best benefit that I can think about when playing Onyxia is that it's probably the best counter if you don't have, of course, leaving aside the hexes, the polymorphs, the silences, it's the best counter for Ragnaros or Sylvanas, because it lowers your their chances of hitting your face or hitting something important or stealing a big minion from your board. So Ragnaros will end up hitting a 1/1 whelp most likely. Sylvanas will end up stealing a 1/1 whelp most likely. So other than that, I don't know if this card has any good uses. I mean, having your board filled with whelps and lose a turn, or you can play it, I don't know, if your opponent has, let's say, 1 minion or 2 minions, yeah, you can play it. But if your opponent has a full board, you're dead. So the last dragon in this deck is Ysera. Maybe Ysera, which was considered for a really long time the best card in the game, and that's because it draws you another card, another powerful card at the end of your turn, and it has an immediate effect. If it gets silenced, it's a 4/12 body that you can either taunt up, or if you can actually taunt it up, you can deal damage with it, and having 12 life actually makes it a good removal for some small minions. But the main uses for it is that it draws you a card, being a dream, which will for 0 mana will return a card to your opponent's hand or your hand if you so desire. A nightmare, which for 0 mana gives +5/+5 to a minion. That would, of course, the downside is that minion is gonna die at the start of your next turn, but having +5/+5, it could make a difference. And you can actually play that card on your opponent's minions. If you have a minion that you want to get rid of and you don't have any removals, you can actually play it, take the damage if you can afford it, or have a taunt up, and then that minion will get destroyed. You can get Ysera Awakens, which is actually the best card that Ysera can give you. For 2 mana cost, it deals 5 damage to everything on the board, including you and your opponent, except Ysera. You can get the Laughing Sister, which is actually buffed up fairy dragon on steroids, because it has 3 attack, 5 health, and it can be targeted by spells or hero abilities. But that's not that good of a card. I mean, you can actually only buff it up using minions. So, and you can get for 5 mana cost the Emerald Drake, 4 mana cost, sorry, the Emerald Drake, which is 7/6 body if I'm not mistaken, and it's a 7/6 body, so pretty good for hitting your opponent's face with it. And the last card in this deck is the Pyroblast. I have 2 of them. This card was really good before it got nerfed, you know, until the patch that changed it. It was only 8 mana. So you can actually, if there were this card gave way to some of the most, I don't know, overpowered considered games, matches in the game, because you only had to deal 10 damage to your opponent till turn 8, and then you begin to Pyroblast him for 10 damage and 10 damage. But anyways, I consider it a good thing to have it in this deck. So this being over with, let's actually go in and play with the deck and see what can we achieve with it. I'm not gonna go into rank play with this one because it's a prototype, let's say, and I'm not willing to lose any stars. Not until I see how this pairs. It's actually really hard to play this deck, and you need a lot of lucky draws. Okay, so the first match is gonna be against the rogue, and right from the start I can see I have a pretty shitty hand. But that's what you get when you have a lot of big minions. And the mulligan that didn't help me out at all here. At least I have the coin. Let's see if I'm going against a miracle rogue. And I draw again the pyroblast. Okay, a pretty high mana hand, and I'm not that confident about winning this game. At least maybe I can get to turn 4 and drop the Azure, which used to be a 4 mana cost card.
Speak to me.
And the Acolyte of Pain, which I have to Frostbolt. I don't want him to get any more value from it. You know, we can shield it or backstab it and draw 2 cards, and that would be annoying, especially if this is a miracle rogue deck. Doesn't seem like it. Okay, so now I can actually play the Azure, and I'll see if he has the assassination, and that will confirm to me that this isn't a miracle rogue if he decides to assassinate. Okay, what's that? Preparation, no. So just eviscerate, so yeah, it's a miracle rogue, alright. And I'm guessing he doesn't have the Gadgedan in his hand.
The Brotherhood shall pay.
Oh, he has Van Cleef, and right now I can use a polymorph. But I can stall Van Cleef at the moment. Deal 1 more damage to him. Okay, that's a good play, but won't help him that much because, as you know, all the mages AoEs bypass stealth. And the Blood Mage Thanos. So right now I'm really forced to play Blizzard. Okay. It would have been nice if I could have copied the Blood Mage. They get another card from me, but at least Van Cleef would gonna die the next turn by Arcane Explosion into fire blast. Okay. Shadow Step? No. So that's a wasteful play of Leroy, but I'm guessing right now he's trying to seal the game. Actually, I could copy Leroy, but again, if I had Well, actually I played the Zero, and that was the combo that I was talking about. If you can get a spell power minion on the board and you have a removal, you can save the day without requiring any more mana. And good game, as you see, you can see it. So that was a promising start, but I must admit I was rather lucky, and I'm guessing this was a player that put together the Miracle Rogue deck but didn't have any idea to play with it. So he actually, like I said, playing Leroy as a rogue without having shadow step or even conceal, it's not worth it. So okay,
Jaina versus Uther.
right, this is gonna be
I will
a hard
fight with
matchup.
You asked for it.
Depends on what deck he's playing. If this is a control Hilladin, it's gonna be really hard. If on the contrary this is a Blessing of Kings deck, that's Southsea deckhand. What the hell is that? I mean, and why would you play it? I don't know, maybe just to make sure I use 2 mana on the Fire Blast. I mean, you have to have a weapon in your hand to make that card effective. But the good side of playing a mage against the paladin, especially if it's the healing of king, the blessing of king paladin, is that you can actually take out those goddamn totems, and this way he can't buff them up, he can't place divine shields on them, at least not until turn 4 or more. So let's see what this guy pulls from his deck this time.
Let me think.
This isn't a standard paladin deck. I'm not sure if it's even a good paladin deck
Reporting for duty.
after seeing that Southsea deck and play there. And this is a good time to play my mana worm. I'm not gonna buff it up right now, because if he has Hammer of Wrath in there, it will die for nothing, and I would have used an Arcane Explosion for nothing just to take out the totem. So let's see what he decides to play, or even if he has True Silver Champion for that matter. So I'm keeping hold of my spells. Maybe I don't have to use them and I can play them in combination with Antonidas or Maligos. So see, that's just what I was talking about.
And plunder.
My mana worm would have died for free. But at least it took 1 charge out of its True Silver, so okay, I'm gonna frostball this guy. There seems to be a pirate paladin deck. So I'm expecting the Bloodsail Raider, right. I was expecting that. And right now he must feel... Oh, he hammered right my face. And 2 silvers my face, so... Okay, slow down there. Man, he's really determined to mess with my face here. I hope I get the chance to drop Cairn and see if I can draw out his removals. Or I don't think he runs Avenging Wrath, or I don't know.
Let me think.
Okay, so right now he must be plotting new and exciting ways of killing me.
Reporting for duty. My shield for Argus.
Oh, Defender of Argus. I'm not gonna Blizzard just yet. I wanna drop Cairn first. Like I said, just to draw an equality or consecration or even a faceless. So we're both going to have
Reporting for duty.
Cairns. Except I'll have two of them. Whoa there. I'll just freeze the entire board. I'm not yet scared by what I'm seeing at the moment. Or I could be.
The rule.
Okay, another Peacekeeper. One more to go. But as you know, Bane comes out as a 4/5, so right now what I'm going to do is get rid of this Cairn. I'll have to use let's see now.
I wonder.
Okay, so I can leave only Cairn on the board. I'm gonna drop the Mana Worm, Blizzard, then the Arcane Explosion, and I want to get this guy killed as fast as possible. Just so I can get the Bane. Take concentration, thank you.
The eyes of the earth are upon us.
Okay. Like I said, it doesn't have any, I don't know, I can actually,
What to do?
let's see if I get lucky. Okay, I got lucky.
The eyes of the earth are upon us.
Okay, this leaves me vulnerable to another consecration, but
Justice.
Guardian of Kings.
Reporting for duty.
So right now I need another spell just to... So here's what we'll do. Drop it, Sarah. A dream. Okay, so if he buffs up,
To Northrend! Reporting for duty.
okay, have fun with them. And what a perfect draw here. Let's see how I want to do this. Let me return Bane to my hand. Just so I can drop in as a 4-5 the next turn. And then Ysera awakens, so right now I'm doing pretty well. I think I might be able to win this. Another Holy Light, so he's filling up excessively. Okay, I'm not gonna play Sarah Awakens right now.
The eyes of the earth.
I can deal with it board like that. Draw another card. Laughing Sister. Give me an Emerald Drake. Again, Sarah gonna take care of that. So let's draw another.
Is in trouble?
Okay,
Ishne Alo Pura.
I'll get rid of that.
I shall bring you rest.
Okay, I'm not going to kill his dude because he can always get. I'm guessing he has equality and he waits for the combo. Another heal. Okay, so that's basically all the heals
Reporting for duty.
he could use. Okay. Let's see now. 4, 12, 15. Well, actually, I have lethal right now.
Ishne Alo Pura.
I shall bring you rest.
That's good game.